first-time home buyers, what do you need to know if you're thinking about buying a house in the next 3 to 12 months? Right here in Snohomish County, we're going to break that all down for you. Gonna share some kind of forecasts for this area and what the growth rate's gonna look like. Going to break down average price point, how that translates into a monthly payment for you, and also how much money do you need to make as a household to afford a home right here in Snohomish County. It might shock you just a little bit when you see that number. So let's jump right into it. So first of all, let's talk about price ranges, locations, if I'm going to be a first-time home buyer. And I think we need to frame this from really two different contexts. Am I a first-time home buyer that's never bought a house before, or am I a first-time home buyer in Snohomish County? And the reason that matters is because if I owned a home somewhere else, maybe I have a big chunk of equity I'm going to put down on this next purchase. That could help massively be a total game changer into how much you pay per month, right? But if you are a first-time buyer and you didn't sell anything from anywhere, the first house you ever bought, this is going to be an uphill climb, just to be totally honest with you. Like, this is not what the market was in 2017 or 18, when if you could spend $2,500 a month, you could buy a house. We had lots of those conversations back then, right? People that were renting, oftentimes the rent translated very close into a mortgage payment because low interest rates, like 3% that we're never going to see again. And then really low home prices too. It was like $450,000 to buy a home in Snohomish County. So let's kind of break this down for people. As far as home prices go, it's about an $850,000 average home price in Snohomish County. That's going to be shocking to some people.
And that's an average. I mean, that's an average of the entire county, which is 19 different towns, 19 different communities. So yes, 850 is the average there, which sounds unachievable for most first-time home buyers.
Yeah, that seems really high. You know, like when I talk to people that are from out of this area, unless they came from Honolulu or the Bay Area, they are shocked by how much it costs to buy a house here.
Correct. Yeah, it's we experience a lot of people, like you said. It's great to kind of make the differentiator either first time here in Snohomish County or first time period, because people who have, especially the people who come from the Midwest or even the South, like they're coming in with average price points in like the low 300s, sometimes even 200s for decent first-time homes, and they're coming up to Snohomish County and they're seeing that same home is going to be in the $500,000 to $600,000 range.
Oh, at least, yeah, no question about that. So, what does $850 get you around here?
It totally depends on the area. So that's really like what we have to look at. We have to look at where are the areas that first-time home buyers really should be open to when it comes to where they're actually going to purchase. Because you're going to, you look at areas like Linwood and even Everett, Mukilteo, Edmonds, Bothell, Mill Creek, even parts like I said, South Everett, kind of Snohomish line. You're going to look at some properties in those areas that are close to everything, that have great, easy commutes, that are close to the freeways. And they're going to be north of that 850 number, right? So they're on the higher end of that average.
That might be pushing the seven figures.
Exactly.
Yeah. So 850, it's probably going to get you a decent size house, like north of 2,000 square feet. It's probably going to get you a 2-car garage. It's probably going to get you a decent location, but not, like you said, maybe not one of those more expensive locations like Edmonds or Bothell. It's like a starter home in Linwood.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. Yeah.
It's a nice home in Everett. It's a really nice home in Granite Falls or Marysville, so it ranges really widely based on your geographical area. When I'm always having these pricing conversations with buyers, just because I try to make sure they understand how geography translates into what they're going to pay and what they're going to get. And I use the example that Seattle and Bellevue are really what I call the epicenter of high pricing in our state. So the further you get away from those areas, the more house you're going to get for your money. In Seattle, the average home price is north of $1 million. In Bellevue, it's north of $2 million, right? And so the further up I go up I-5, the freeway, if you're not from here, the more house I get,
exactly.
Right? So Linwood is cheaper than Shoreline. Everett's cheaper than Linwood. Marysville's cheaper than Everett, right? It just works that way. And that's that kind of balance, is kind of figuring out how far out of the city can you live, like if you work in Seattle, for instance, or if you work in Everett, and what's that balance between value and commute?
Exactly. you have to balance and figure out what the trade-offs are going to be. Like, are you okay paying a little bit less? Because everybody wants to pay less, right? But for the trade-off for paying less is that you're going to not have as good of a vicinity and proximity to those main thoroughfares, those main areas. So you're trading off distance for price, or conversely, you're trading a higher price for closer vicinity.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to put the $850,000 into a context that makes it very easy to understand, payment, right? Because most people don't actually buy a house for how much they spend on the total purchase, but more on what they spend on the monthly payment. If you put a minimal amount of money down, which is pretty common for first-time home buyers, most first-time home buyers do not have 20% down. So if you put 5% down at $850, you're looking at a payment in today's mortgage rates at around $6,400.
Yeah. And we're talking November 2024.
Right. Rates are like mid sixes right now. So take that into consideration. But when you put 5% down, you are going to be paying some degree of private mortgage insurance, right? And you're just not putting a ton of money down. So obviously your mortgage balance is higher, right? So yeah, that $6,400, I think, shocks some people.
100%. I mean, you think about like that $6,400 being a monthly mortgage payment, and I mean, it didn't exist in our area 5 or 6 years ago, right? It has gone up so intensely over the last couple of years that people coming from Midwest and other areas, they're thinking, oh, holy smokes, like there's no way I can afford that. Right. But people who are waiting, I mean, let's tell a story of how many people in 2017, 2018 were wanting to wait because mortgages had just crested over what rental payments were. And people were like, oh no, they're going to come back down, so let's wait. And now they're completely priced out of the market.
Yeah, no, waiting is not the best solution in real estate. I always tell people like the best time to buy real estate was like 20 years ago. The next best time is today, right? Stop waiting. Stop trying to time the market. So, yeah, $6,400. And the reason that seems like a lot is, one, because it is. And then two, if you look at the US and you look at the average income, $6,400 a month is more than the average income for the country.
Yeah, as a median income. Exactly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Not for a mortgage payment, but for just their income, like the total amount of money that household makes. Mm-hmm. So that's where the shock and awe, I think, really comes into play. 100%. So we kind of share that 850 is that average, but how low can people get and like still squeak out a house? Yeah. Like, and when I say a house, I want to make sure that people understand we're talking a house that is at least financeable, because some people don't know that homes have certain conditions they must meet in order to qualify for typical loan programs, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it has to have heat source. You have to be able to cook. You have to have obviously running water and a septic system or connected to sewer. So there are minimum requirements, right, for financeable, and obviously like a roof and a structure that's in sound condition, foundation sound condition. So again, like we're completely dependent on the area when we're talking about pricing, but in some areas, if you go way far out, if you're going out to Darrington, if you're going out to deep Arlington up north and east, you can find stuff in the high 400s, mid 400s.
But it's really hard. And it's really the condition is like a 2 out of 10.
Right. Like it's livable. It's habitable. It's not going to be, you're not going to move in and be like excited about the condition of the property. Right. As you get closer to towns, as you get closer to Arlington or Marysville or even Granite Falls now and into Lake Stevens, I mean, you're probably talking 550, 600 for, again, maybe a 4 or 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I would consider 550 like the lowest you can probably go to get a home that would be suitable for a family. Like you could get a small 2-bedroom, like 800 square foot home for less than that for sure in some of those areas. But to actually like have a family of like 4 or 5, be able to live in a home and it's in a condition that's financeable, I think 550 right now is kind of like the bottom you're going to get to, you know, and that's a tough reality for people to wrap their head around, but we come from truth here, and that is the reality of where things are at. So yeah, like if you're going to buy a home for 550, you can expect a home that's going to be in some of those outlying areas, kind of like what you were talking about. If that's your budget, I would really focus in on Marysville, has got some good opportunities there. Granite Falls, like you mentioned, Sultan, Gold Bar, some of those peripheral areas that are a little further out, could make potential sense if you're trying to get into that like really low price point to actually get into buying a house, which again, I think is 550. What does 550 translate to in a monthly payment? Well, it depends again on how much money you put down. If you put down 20%, you'd probably be like around $3,200 a month, including taxes, insurance, all that stuff. Again, when I put out these numbers, I'm including the taxes and insurance into it as well. And then if you're going to put down minimum, like let's say you're just a first-time home buyer, you do 3.5% down, probably more like $4,400 a month.
Right.
Which is still not small.
Right. Well, exactly right. And there again, we're talking about the trade-offs, right? Like you're still choosing a lower payment, but you own something. And I think the reason that most people hesitate to get into it is because of that monthly price, because that sticker is so high, so much higher than they would really like. But why do people do it? It's the stability. Right? Like when you're in a rental, and I mean, rentals in our area are still not caught up to mortgage payments, but when you're in a rental in our area and it's $3,500 a month, and you can get a really decent home, very close proximity to things if there's not a ton of competition on it. Quick story. I had a girlfriend who was moving with her kids into a property, and it went up for a rent for $3,000 a month. This place is old. It is not updated. It is old appliances, but great location. There were 6 applications in the first 24 hours for a rental on that property, and she had to bid up her rent amount in order to win it. So yes, there's competition both on the sale side and the rent side, but people are choosing to buy instead of rent because they're never going to have to worry about that rent going up, right? And in a rental, yes, you can sign a 2-year lease, but after that landlord could easily raise the rent $500 a month and probably get it. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good topic to bring up, is why would I buy when I can rent for less in this market? And stability for sure is one of those things. And I think overall wealth is also another really big one of those things. If you guys look at the statistics of people that own a home versus people that don't own a home, the people that own a home are worth on average about 5 times as much as the person that does not own a house. So for most people, the home appreciation, the home equity they start building becomes a very, very big part of their net worth, right? Because you live in that home for years,
And think about it this way. Like, say you get into a home and it's a stretch. Like, you're putting everything you have into the down payment, into closing costs. You are now paying a little bit more than you're comfortable with, but 3 years from now, your payment is going to stay the same unless you actually refinance and bring that payment down, which is totally possible. Pay off your PMI, right? There's so many options ahead of time. So not only is your payment not going to go up, except with maybe taxes, but it's possible it goes down, and that home is going to continue to appreciate. Every single market we've seen since before 2008, we are caught up on appreciation. So we're averaging between 4 and 6% every single year. So your net worth will go up between 4 and 6% every single year. So even if it feels like a pinch for the first year, 2 years, 3 years, that you're building equity in that property, and therefore you're building wealth for your family.
Right. And that 4 to 6%, it's not just like a nice, cool lineal progression up. It's more like this. But if you're living in a home for like 5 or more years, the odds are fairly high you're going to make money on it in our market. So let's translate these purchase prices into incomes for folks. Let's talk about DTI. Do you want to explain DTI for people, just because this is a term we throw around in real estate in the mortgage business? And it's kind of like the big rule of thumb you want to keep in mind as you're looking at your income and figuring out how much you can spend on a home.
Yeah, exactly. So DTI is debt to income ratio. So what a lender is going to look at is, what are your overall payments? So your car payments, your credit card payments, the debt that you have and are holding that you are having to make payments on. What does that percentage of your income that goes towards that debt in relation to the actual income that you have coming in, the net income you have coming in? So the minimums kind of vary based on the product, but they are anywhere from 45, 50-ish% that if you have to be under in order to qualify for a different mortgage programs.
Right. Yeah. FHA caps around 55, and VA can go even a little bit higher than that. I mean, we have a hard time recommending to our clients to go into the 50s on debt to income ratio, with a couple of notable exceptions that we can talk about here in just a minute. But if you push up into that 50s on debt to income, you're going to live kind of a stressful lifestyle where you've got an awesome house, but you can't really afford to do much else, right? Like, you can't travel and take awesome vacations. You really can't afford to go do anything, and you're definitely not getting ahead as far as like saving for retirement or something like that goes. It's not necessarily the best place to be. The kind of exception to that is when I meet these guys. Like, I have a lot of people that work at Meta and Microsoft, and all these like tech companies, and they are making like 150 grand. They will max their DTI out at 50 to 25%, knowing they're going to be making a lot more than that, right? They're on what I call the upward trajectory of their career earnings, right?
Yep, they're guaranteed.
Yeah. What they make now is going to be the least amount of money they ever make, right? So that DTI is kind of a short-term problem.
Yeah, and those are unique situations, obviously. And, the other thing to be said about DTI is, one of the best things that you can do, especially if you're preparing to be a first-time homeowner in our area or if at all, is chat with the lender way ahead of time. Like, say you don't have a ton of cash, or maybe you have a little bit of cash, but you've got quite a bit of debt that you're paying down on. Well, that lender is going to be able to navigate you in a way so that you have options in regards to what to do with that money. Because it's not always that you take this chunk of money, whether it's from a property that you sold in another state, or if it's something that you've been holding on to for a long time or building for a long time. You don't just necessarily want to take all that money and toss it straight at the down payment. Like, there's a lot of different ways to get creative with that money to affect your DTI. So sometimes it's paying exact amounts on credit cards, or maybe it's paying off a car loan, or there's different things that you can do with it instead of just putting it into the property in order to consolidate that payment. So make sure that you're talking way ahead of time with us, with the lender, in order to help actually put together a game plan for yourself.
Yeah, if you're talking to a lender and they're not coaching and guiding you through how to use your money in the most efficient way, you're probably talking to the wrong person. Like, that's where someone goes from just being a lender to being a financial consultant for you, and that's really what you should be expecting if you're going to be buying a house. So just to give kind of like a couple of rules of thumbs on how much a household needs to make to afford these purchase price numbers. So if you're going to buy an average home of $850 and you're going to put a minimum amount down, you're going to need to have an income in that household, which could mean, both people working, it could mean one person working, but it's going to need to be north of $200,000 a year.
$200,000.
Right. Yep. So that's a big number. But we do have a lot of tech jobs in our market. A lot of people are making really, really solid money at these companies. So we also have Boeing. Boeing is a great employer. So a lot of people do, they come close to that number, which is awesome, especially if they've got two incomes. The two incomes makes it definitely attainable for sure.
100%.
When it comes to buying kind of on the lower ends of things, so if you went down to that $550 purchase price, you're going to need to make a little bit over $100,000 a year if you don't have a lot of other debt to be able to afford that. And again, that'd be with kind of like a minimum amount down. So $100,000 for the $550 purchase price, more like $200,000 on the $850 purchase price, all assuming minimum down payment scenarios. So let's talk about growth for Snohomish County, because you might, as you watch this video, you're probably thinking, I would be thinking, well, shit, I'm just going to wait for prices to come down.
Yep.
And this is going to be a really hard wake-up call for you. But we're going to share with you what the growth looks like for Snohomish County and why that's not going to happen. I've actually had people tell me they're going to wait for prices to go down since 2017. And during that period of time, homes went from $450 on average to $850. So
almost doubled. Dude.
They're still waiting.
Yeah, literally.
And they probably can't afford to buy a home anymore, right, which is the tough part. That kind of wait and see approach when you don't own a home to buy a home is a really dangerous slope to be on because of that dynamic of getting priced out of the market. Like, if home prices go up another 5 or 10%, there's a lot of people that right on that line right now where they might not be able to buy a house if that happened.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So when we're talking about population, right? If people are losing faith in the market and saying, I'm waiting for prices to go down, let's give you a couple of reasons as to why that is absolutely not going to happen. As of 2020, it's more now, but as of 2020, the population in Snohomish County was about 830,000. I think it's closer to 900,000 now in 2024. And the projections for where we're going to be in the next 20 years, I believe, is another 350,000 people.
The county of Snohomish has come out with their growth predictions and their Growth Management Act and Comprehensive Plan, and they have said there will be over 1.1 million people living in Snohomish County by 2035. So that's not that far out, you guys. And we can see all these people continuing to move into our area. We can see traffic continuing to get worse. There is just more and more people coming here, and they're coming here because of the jobs. I mean, there's a big naval expansion happening down there at the Navy base. There's just a lot of stuff happening in this area. This is a really desirable place for jobs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Why are people moving here? Well, the geography is awesome. The views are gorgeous. You've got oceans and you've got mountain, and you've got really stable job growth. One of the cool things that we didn't really touch on before, but one of the ways that the county and Everett especially is kind of addressing this affordability situation and the potential of all this new population coming in is the density, right? And creating much smaller homes at lower price points in order to house a significant amount of people. So as a first-time home buyer, like there's so many people that get into the market, I think, and they say, well, I want this, I want the space, I want the yard, I want all these things. And I really implore you to say, hey, like, you just need to get into the game. It's not about waiting for the perfect dream home.
Your first home is not your dream home.
No, it's like the perfect home for this season.
Right. Yeah. The average person actually owns 5 houses during their lifetime. And if you're waiting to buy a home to buy your dream home, that is a really dangerous place to be. Like you're gonna eventually get priced out of the market. A much better approach, like you just said, come up with the non-negotiables that you could live with. They're not optimal, but that you could live with them, right? Maybe instead of 4 bedrooms, it's 3. Maybe instead of 2,000 square feet, it's 1,200 square feet. But you own this piece of real estate. You're not paying somebody else's mortgage. They're not making equity and appreciation off of your back. You are holding on to those things. That is the single most important thing. So what if you're thinking about buying? Like, what are the next couple of steps that people should consider taking?
I mean, the first thing obviously is you're going to want to talk with somebody who is a specialist in the area. So connect with us. You want to make sure that the person that you're working with knows the area really well, has your best interest in mind, is going to give it to you straight, just like we always do here, and start crafting a game plan. Obviously, after connecting with an agent, you want to connect with a lender. You really need to get nitty-gritty with your numbers. You have to be incredibly honest when it comes to what you make, what you spend, what your DTI is, and what your motivation is. Like, what is your timeline? What do you actually want to do? There's a lot of first-time home buyers that bring family members into the picture when it comes to getting a loan just to get them into the property. So a lot of people will have grandma sign or mom and dad sign. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily bringing in money, but it helps solidify that first home. So first things first, obviously connect with us, connect with a great agent, and then connect with a lender. Let's start talking numbers.
Yeah, a lot of people will wait to reach out to us until they've talked to a lender, and you definitely don't need to do that. I don't even recommend doing that. Talk to us first about what your goals are. Set up a time to come meet with us at our office. Set up an appointment. We will walk you through the home buying process so you know exactly what to expect buying a house. We'll go have a much deeper conversation with you about the market. We'll talk about what you want and need in a home, and then we will come up with a game plan that's unique and customized for you on how you're going to take that from a dream into reality. And then at that point, we'll connect you with a lender we think could be a good fit for you. 100%. So if you want to connect with us, meetthenovaks.com is the place to be. I'm at The Real Mike Novak on Instagram. You can check me out there and connect with me there.
And I am at Rachel Novak on Instagram and Facebook.
We'll see you next week.